everyone, and welcome back. It is I, the Unboxing Boy. You might be looking around and thinking, where am I? Why is this boy not in his void? I have emerged from the void, and I have emerged for a very good reason, and that is to speak with you again about physical media. Today, we are talking about a very special year. A year before the Unboxing Boy was born. A critical year in movie history. We're talking about the year 1976, and look at all of my shit. 1976 cinema stands before me. We're going to talk through some of it, but you might be asking yourself, why is this boy speaking of movies from 50 years ago? There's a very good reason. There are two critical, essential, beautiful, emotional new releases from the year 1976 that have just been released. So I'm going to show them to you right now. The first, right here you can see a gorgeous steelbook of All the President's Men. One of my favorite movies of all time. A former entrant on the Rewatchables podcast. Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman play Woodward and Bernstein, the two valiant reporters from the Washington Post who cracked the Watergate scandal and ultimately led to the downfall of Richard Milhous Nixon. This movie dramatizes the act of reporting, which is insanely boring. This new film, or I should say this new release of this film, is amazing for a variety of reasons, most especially because shot by Gordon Willis, the cinematographer, the film is famously dark and captured in shadow. And the contrast in the cinematography by Willis and Alan Pakula's direction is a little bit complicated. And on a home video, I would say this film was not as successful. You couldn't see it as clearly. Now, that may have added to some of the atmosphere, but didn't clarify as much of the artistry. This new edition is about as good as this movie is ever going to look, in my opinion. I just rewatched it over the weekend. It was fantastic and engaging as always. But this new edition, which also features a handful of special features, mostly just short documentaries featuring prominent journalists talking about the impact that the movie had on them, are worthwhile, not as essential as you would like for some of the other things that we'll see as we go through these years. But this is something I have wanted in my collection for a very long time, and I'm so excited it's here. So that's All the President's Men. The other major 1976 release, which is now available in 4K, is Network. Sidney Lumet's Network. If you've been listening to The Big Picture for some years, you know the impact that this movie had on me, has on me, the predictive nature that it had about the world at large. The script by Paddy Chayefsky is perhaps the greatest American screenplay. I think there is a case for it. At least the American screenplay with the most soliloquies, thunderous speeches, prognosticating about the future. An amazing movie. Peter Finch, William Holden, Faye Dunaway, extraordinary performances. The late Robert Duvall as Frank Hackett. And this from the Criterion Collection really has so many cool special features, including an entire making of documentary for the film, which is well over an hour and a half, and also another entirely individualized documentary about Paddy Chayefsky, the screenwriter who became famous for his screenplay for the Academy Award-winning film Marty, and then he went on to write some of my favorite movies of the 70s and 80s, including The Hospital and Altered States. And there's a whole 90-minute film about him and about his complex and embittered view of the world and the way that it manifested in the movies. So I highly recommend this release as well. This new 4K master also looks phenomenal. While we're talking about new releases, there is another new release, a film I've just seen for the first time that I wanted to shine a little bit of light on before we get into the history of this year in the movies. This is a movie called Illustrious Corpses. It comes to us from Radiance, one of the very best boutique Blu-ray labels in the world. It's a Francesco Rossi film starring Lino Ventura, and it is a fascinating Italian-French film. It's sort of a murder mystery, sort of a political thriller, part Costa Gavras, part 12 Angry Men, about a detective who is investigating the murders of Supreme Court justices and why these justices are being murdered, who's murdering them, and what's really underneath how the government is operating at this time in history in 76. Great film. I just watched it for the first time 2 days ago. Beautiful, dark, wildly cynical, fits very neatly in with Network and All the President's Men in terms of what the culture, not just of America, but of the entire world was at this time as we're sort of transitioning out of the hopefulness of the 1960s into a far darker decade in the 1970s. And, Rossi, who's probably best known for Salvatore Giuliano and a handful of other Italian films. I think this is one of his some mid-period masterpieces and a movie that certainly deserves more attention. So those are 3 new releases that I highly recommend spending your time on. And I was planning for the big picture and thinking what would be a cool 1970s year we could do for a movie draft. It's been 50 years since 1976. The 1970s are my favorite period in American movie making and in some cases international movie making as well. Started racking my brain thinking about the movies that came out at that time and then started thinking about how they were represented on physical media. And it turns out it's very well represented. One of the things that I complain about is that oftentimes, not a lot of films are available to watch in certain formats, and there are some 76 movies that are not available. But as you can see, I've managed to amass a good number of all-time classics, international classics, some films from major boutique labels, some more under the surface hidden gems that you might find, horror films, action films, classic studio stuff. Let me show you some of it now. I want to show you what I have. I want you to aspire to see these movies. If you can own them, that's great. I encourage you to do so. What I really want you to do is to prepare for this draft. Now, I don't know that more than 20% of these movies are going to get drafted, but they will be discussed. And I'm also trying to nudge my draftees, Amanda and Chris, to spend a little bit more time checking out some of these movies. Where should we start? Should we start steelbooks? Should we start 4Ks? Should we start with box sets that feature a 76 film? Should we start with the Criterion stack? Let's start with the steelbooks. Let's have a little conversation about steelbooks. Why do they matter? Why are they interesting? Why are they so damned expensive? I don't really know. I don't really know why people like these, but I do like them. And I tend to reserve the acquisition of steelbook for very rare beloved films to me personally. So the films that we talk through here are going to be, for the most part, all-time classics. The first, of course, is Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, one of the greatest films ever made. And this is a slick steelbook. It's hard. These are hard to take care of. You got to ask yourself the question, do you need the plastic slipcase over this or not? This one was not issued with a plastic slipcase. Lionsgate Limited, for example, every steelbook that they make, they send it to you with a plastic slipcase. This disc from Columbia Pictures does not have a slipcase. So we got Taxi Driver. Of course, Martin Scorsese's pal, Brian De Palma's massive commercial breakthrough, Carrie, also available in 4K steelbook. This comes to us, I believe, from Scream Factory. You may recall on the most recent episode of the Physical Media High Council, I was gifted this copy of the remake of King Kong from 1976, produced by Dino De Laurentiis, which does in fact have the plastic slipcase. Not only that, but the slipcase is integrated into the artwork. So you can see here, we've got King Kong clutching Fay Wray, or not Fay Wray, Jessica Lange in the Fay Wray part. Pretty cool. I wish more of them did this. We were just talking about Sinners on the big picture and the influence of Assault on Precinct 13, which is the proper cinematic debut of, I guess, the second film, but it feels like the proper cinematic debut of John Carpenter because Dark Star, almost more of a student film. This movie available in steelbook from Scream Factory as well. And then 2025 release, The Outlaw Josie Wales, starring Clint Eastwood. All these releases are 4Ks. They're all beautiful. They're all forever movies for me. King Kong, the remake, not that great, but it is important historically. More 4Ks. Let's look quickly. Recent rewatchables entrant, Marathon Man. Controversial Diane Keaton classic, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. This is a great transfer from Vinegar Syndrome. Mustafa Akkad's The Message. That may be a notable name to you because this is the man who actually put up the money to produce a little film called Halloween. He also was a filmmaker in his own right. An Arrow release of Alice, Sweet Alice, no relation to my daughter. Terrifying horror film. Roman Polanski's The Tenant, which recently came to us from Vinegar Syndrome as well. This one's for all the horn dogs out there. Russ Meyer's Up. I'm going to show you the back of this, but you guys may need to blur this at home. This is a fairly erotic film about powerful women. I'll leave it at that. Genre maestro Larry Cohen's God Told Me To. which is exactly why I'm here today. And Giallo adjacent, The House with Laughing Windows, which was recently issued by Arrow Video. This movie is a really good example of kind of where we're at with physical media. Movies like this were curios that you could only find in repertory theaters for the longest time. Never streaming. If they were buried on Amazon and they would never be promoted to you. And now all of a sudden, we've just got this gorgeous $50 4K release of a relatively obscure horror movie from the time. It's an amazing time to be a collector. That's just the truth. All right. So that's really more of the high-end stuff. Those 4K boutique releases that'll run you $30, $40, $50. The steelbooks, which will do the same. If you're going to shop for those things, try to get them at a discount if you can. Try to get them in a bundle, 2 steelbooks for $40, that sort of thing. As a collector, there's something tricky that happens where I love to have an individual release stack. I love to have an individual film that I can point to and say, hey, I might have a Clint Eastwood box set at home, but I also have this 4K individual edition of The Outlaw Josie Wales. I don't have that for everything. So instead, what I have is all these boxes. Here's a 4-film collection of Eastwood movies. It's got Firefox, Absolute Power, Sudden Impact, and another Dirty Harry film, The Enforcer. That's the 76 film, The Enforcer. I really like this movie. I wish I had a giant steelbook of it. I don't, so I just have to keep these collections. I've got more of these. Here's another classic example. 3 awesome 70s sci-fi movies. You got Logan's Run, Soylent Green, and The Omega Man. The latter 2 of which star Charlton Heston. The first one stars Michael York and Jenny Agutter and has nothing really to do with it other than it's just sci-fi. This is where my Logan's Run 1976 exists. I don't have an individuated copy. We can get high-minded too. Chantal Akerman, her masterpiece collection from the Criterion Collection. This features her 1976 film News from Home. News from Home, which is basically a series of postcards to her mother shot against the images of New York City. It is a really interesting work of personal, it feels like autofiction in some ways. It's unclear how truthful all of her expressions are, but really interesting movie, and it's stuck inside of this collection. More collections, perhaps you've heard of Rocky. Rocky won Best Picture in 1977 for 1976, and I don't have it on 4K. I just have this box set that features Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. How would I power rank 5 Rocky movies? Well, 5 is the worst. I think, gosh, let's sit here quietly and think about this. I think 4, then 3, then 1, then 2. Is that crazy? Is 2 better than 1? 1 is very slow. I think I'm going to go with that. I've not seen Rocky Balboa, so I'm not going to weigh in on that one. Here is an Alfred Hitchcock collection. You don't think Alfred Hitchcock when you think 1976, but he did in fact make a film, Family Plot, one of his final films, which can be found in this box, which also features Saboteur, Shadow of a Doubt, The Trouble with Harry, Marnie, and Family Plot. There are 3 different collections of Alfred Hitchcock 4Ks. This features a few of his lesser-known films. I would say Shadow of a Doubt is probably the singular masterpiece in this collection. Still worth owning. Family Plot, I like it fine. Probably won't rewatch it ever again in my life. And yet I own this. And then, last but not least in the box sets, Werner Herzog. My guy Vern. So in 1976, he did make a film. That film is called Heart of Glass. It's sort of right before his glory period really begins with Klaus Kinski. It's after Aguirre, The Wrath of God, but it's before Nosferatu, the Vampire, and Fitzcarraldo. Heart of Glass is a fun film. A period piece, very much with his German roots attached, and always in pursuit of ecstatic truth. So that's Werner. Let's talk about Criterion. I mean, let's just look at the whole stack here all at once. What can we say? No one does more to preserve international and American film history than the Criterion Collection. They are very well represented in 1976. I don't even have everything that they have released here. There are a couple of DVD-only releases, among them Coup de Grace and Inshang, which is only available, the Lino Brocca film, which is only available in one of the Martin Scorsese World Cinema Project discs. There's a couple of others that are not here, but what is here You can see from my original John Cassavetes DVD box set release, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. You can see Barbara Koppel's masterpiece, arguably the greatest American documentary ever made, Harlan County, USA. Carlos Sora's Cria Cuervos is here. For the sickos, Salo. You know, Salo is a film. Mikey and Nikki, Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, again, an Elaine May's masterpiece. Speaking of masterpiece documentaries, the Maisels Brothers, Grey Gardens. We've got another documentary, Not a Pretty Picture, kind of blended fiction documentary film by Martha Coolidge, which was recently issued on the Criterion Collection, about a woman who endures a terrible assault and kind of the aftermath of her life. We'll come back to that idea, which is also explored in another movie from 1976. Here is a film that I just saw for the first time that I just mentioned on the podcast, In the Realm of the Senses, Nagisa Oshima's sexual classic, a film that literally features unsimulated sex as an inherent part of its story about two people who become obsessively, physically connected to one another. I saw it in a movie theater with a friend and many other strangers, and that was interesting. So this is a stack that has Salo and In the Realm of the Senses, worth noting. Also, Mr. Klein, Joseph Losey, late period classic with Alain Delon, and Kings of the Road from the Wim Wenders early trilogy box set that Criterion released. You can't go wrong owning any of these movies. Now, if you have a friend come over or an aspirant romantic partner and they see Salo on your shelf, you know, you can explain maybe the historical necessity of Pier Pasolini, you know, like that there's something to his work that really matters, but don't get into too much detail. Okay. Other international films that I just wanted to point out really quickly. One, we've got Chinese Roulette from Rainer Werner Fassbinder. A wonderful movie. He made two movies actually in 1976. This is the one that I own. We've also got from Kinji Fukasaku, an awesome Radiance release of Yakuza Graveyard. This is a CR classic. And then Bernardo Bertolucci's 4-hour 1900, which is a gorgeous and epic period piece. A few things you might want to check out. Okay, now down to the regular shit. I have a few DVDs I want to show you. The first is a movie I just showed to Amanda Dobbins. It's called I Will for Now. This is only available on a Warner Brothers Archive DVD. It stars Diane Keaton, the late great Diane Keaton, and Elliot Gould. I've not seen this movie. I bought this movie, not for this, but to do the Diane Keaton Hall of Fame, which we will do one day. This is essentially immediately in the aftermath of The Godfather and the Woody Allen films. So it's, you'd imagine it'd be a better known film, but it's not. I've also got two really notable Jonathan Demme movies, both of which were made for Roger Corman, neither of which, to the best of my knowledge, are available on Blu-ray. The first stars Peter Fonda and is called Fighting Mad. It comes in this action-packed double feature, which also comes alongside Moving Violation. And the other is called Caged Heat. It's a women in prison picture. We haven't spent a lot of time on women in prison pictures here on the Unboxing Boy. Maybe we will in the future. There's a real strain of perversion going on in a lot of the films I'm showing you here. Jonathan Demme, of course, went on to become the director behind The Silence of the Lambs, among other classics. And Demme, like so many filmmakers from his era, got his start making low-budget genre movies for Roger Corman. All right, let's keep moving. Let's do Boutique. Are you familiar with Massacre at Central High? Perhaps you should be. An early forebear of There's Something Wrong with the Kids thrillers that comes to us from Synapse Films. That is a movie that was very lost to time and has essentially been rediscovered. I know Joe Bob Briggs spotlit it at a certain point on his series on Shudder, and is now getting a little bit more acclaim as a movie that sort of predicts where horror storytelling is going. Bugsy Malone, I believe not available on a US Blu-ray. This is an early Jodie Foster movie directed by Alan Parker. A lot of fun. It's a movie in which it's a gangster story about Bugsy Malone, but all the gangsters in all the malls are played by kids. Seems weird. It actually works pretty well. Late period Don Siegel movie, The Shootist, starring John Wayne. I'm always fascinated when Arrow decides to issue a movie like this, which is Unspectacular, but well made. And now you can spend $30 and buy it. I've got 4 titles from Indicator, which I think is the most underrated of the boutique distributors. This is an English company that issues lots and lots and lots of second, third tier films from well-known filmmakers, and also spotlights a lot of really great genre movies. There's been a big rollout of the genre on vampire movies for this company over the last year or so. But here we've got Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars, a great baseball movie. We've got The Front, which is one of the rare Woody Allen starring films from the 1970s that he did not direct. This movie is directed by Martin Ritt, who made many Paul Newman films. We've got Midway, classic barn burner war film from the 70s, and a film that we've talked about a little bit on the show in the past, Buffalo Bill and the Indians, which is a Robert Altman movie with Paul Newman. What else do we have? 2 films from my beloved Twilight Time. Twilight Time is a now defunct distributor of Blu-rays that licensed some fascinating movies, including Harry and Walter Go to New York, another Elliott Gould movie from this time that is largely forgotten, co-stars James Caan and Diane Keaton, of course, and Hal Ashby's Bound for Glory, which is a phenomenal, phenomenal portrait of the folk singer Woody Guthrie. Did you know that Robert Duvall played Dr. Watson in the Sherlock Holmes story, 7% Solution? This is a movie that is directed by is written by Nicholas Meyer. It's directed by Herbert Ross, and it also stars Alan Arkin as Sherlock Holmes. It stars as Sigmund Freud. It stars Nicole Williamson as Sherlock Holmes. Features Vanessa Redgrave. This comes to us from 88 Films, which is a really great distributor as well. Bob Rafelson's Stay Hungry, an old Olive release. I love Olive. Here's the studio movie that also features a very dramatic and painful to watch sexual assault called Lipstick, starring Margot Hemingway and Chris Sarandon. This is one of the more upsetting movies I've ever seen from an American studio, and also enraging. And there is a new film that just premiered at Sundance called Josephine that this film feels like it's in direct lineage of, and I'd be curious to match these 2 films together. There's a very interesting conversation on the Video Archives podcast that Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery host about this movie, and it is interesting to me that it's even been made available on physical. We have our second Brian De Palma movie, Obsession, a very clear Hitchcock riff starring Cliff Robertson as a man trying to reshape a woman's identity. Huge Vertigo vibes here. Murder by Death, a fun Agatha Christie detective spoof starring a lot of great 70s stars. And you may remember from The High Council, Lifeguard, starring Sam Elliott, in which he plays a strapping lifeguard trying to figure out who he really is as a man. Those are all boutiques. Fun City Editions, Shout Factory, Scream Factory, Radiance. Check out all these companies. I've got a few more left to show you. These are just your run-of-the-mill movies that came out that year and the editions that we have for them. So one of the biggest hits of that year, The Omen. This disc comes out of a box set that Scream Factory issued that has 5 different Omen movies. Omen 1, Omen 2, Omen 3, Omen 4, and the remake of The Omen, which came out in 2006 with Liev Schreiber. It does not feature the first Omen, directed by Arkasha Stevenson, which I think is one of the great movies of the 2020s. Burt Reynolds, directorial effort, Gator. You guys seen Gator? Pretty good. Enjoyed it. Horror movie I really enjoy, Burnt Offerings, about a haunted house, quite literally. The Bad News Bears, all-time classic. Buttermaker, Walter Matthau. Lena Wertmüller's Seven Beauties. Alan Rudolph's Welcome to LA. This is hard to find. This is a good one. I saw this was on eBay for $100. Just clock this. Barbra Streisand's reimagining of A Star is Born opposite Chris Christopherson. Another musical movie, Sparkle. Nicholas Roeg's The Man Who Fell to Earth. I don't have the 4K of this. I apologize. I wish I did. I just don't. Elia Kazan's The Last Tycoon. This is an adaptation of a famous work of literature about the history of Hollywood by F. Scott Fitzgerald and stars Robert De Niro. And it's made by Kazan, and you think this movie would be a bigger deal. No one cares about it. And here's Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando in a movie called The Missouri Breaks, directed by Arthur Penn, that also has very little critical reputation, but is kind of interesting. Now, why did I show you all this stuff? What was the point of this exercise? Was it just to flaunt all of my physical possessions? Was it just to show you that there is more history than you realize? Was it to show you that we're missing some things that we need? I haven't listed any of the things that we're missing, and I don't really want to do that right now. I mean, it's all of the above. I think it's a sign that we're in better shape than we realize when it comes to preserving all of these beautiful artifacts, and that having these things at our fingertips makes us more likely to observe them, to commune with them, to make a connection to their stories, and that it's a lot easier than just scrolling endlessly through tile after tile of thing that you think you might want to watch, but you don't really know. I personally have a complicated relationship to the idea of being a lending library. I only let really true loved ones come and borrow things. Maybe some fine folks working today with the Unboxing Boy will be able to borrow some of these things to prepare for our episode. But make a connection with someone who has a collection, and then start to build your own collection. Start to commune with 1976, and then 1956, and then 1936. Get into movie history. Get closer. Become a Woodward and Bernstein of cinema history. Thank you for watching. This has been the Unboxing Boy. We'll see you very soon.